I believe that leadership is fighting the phrase, ignorance is bliss. Merriam-Webster defines this phrase like so: used to say that a person who does not know about a problem does not worry about it. This phrase is normally directed towards children and applied to how naive they can be. I would say this phrase leads to the wrong mindset for children and how adults treat children. If children are exposed to ways they can be leaders and create an inclusive and equitable world, the cycle of socialization can be shifted. I also believe that adults should be conscious about it as well. Adults have the power and maturity to understand others and be leaders as well. This is why I believe that my belief in practicing ignorance, not being blissful, will contribute to a more inclusive world. My belief in leadership is going out of my way to change the way things work to create a more inclusive and equitable world. By implementing this belief, I can encourage those around me to challenge themselves to this as well. While my belief could be observed as clear and straightforward from someone else's perspective, the concept goes much deeper than simply correcting someone when they use that phrase. It means ensuring that people around me and outside of me are informed and understanding of the world around them. My leadership will contribute to creating a better world by striving to test my own limits. In this slide right here, I have shown pictures of my family. My belief is grounded heavily in my cultural story. My parents and 2 older siblings come from Chihuahua, Mexico. Our skin color does not prove where my family came from and who we are. We are a German Mennonite family, which means I grew up wearing dresses to school, as well as my older sister and mom. My classmates and peers never understood why I wore these dresses. They simply thought it was just for fun. This has to do with the first socialization and the cycle of socialization. If people saw someone white, they assumed that their family was born in America. Everyone is expected to learn English. My oldest brother's first year of school, after coming to America, he failed every single class because of his lack of English. Instead of trying to accommodate to his learning needs or praise him for being able to speak another language, they failed him and he was forced to learn only English. My parents also spoke their first language at home, which was Low German. This language is extremely uncommon, and it almost seems like when I tell people this, they invalidate my language. They think I can speak High German as well, which is really considered the only German language to a lot of people. I've had to watch my family speak less and less of this language, and my younger brother barely knows a lick of it. While I was born in America, I saw firsthand how my older siblings were treated and that they were not able to embrace where they came from. As I grew up and was able to tell my family's story, I realized how many people do not know anything about my culture. I would tell people that I was German Mennonite, and they would ask me if my grandparents were like Nazis. This is where the phrase, ignorance is bliss, really starts to bother me. So for the next few slides, I have quotes that I believe represent what I'm speaking about best. This first quote says, "Real empathy is sometimes not insisting that it will be okay, but acknowledging that it is not." In the Leading Across Cultures Reflection Journal, Max states that empathy is not an innate talent or trait that some people have and some people do not. This is powerful to me because I truly believe that empathy is something that people need to understand and when they can practice it. Critical empathy is being meaningful and purposeful with being an inclusive leader. I can practice my leadership with empathy by engaging with people and their stories. I have always thought that I was an extremely sympathetic person, but throughout this semester, I have realized that I need much more than sympathy. Practicing inclusive leadership with empathy also means asking questions and respecting their boundaries. This infers in also ensuring that people are comfortable with me, which I can practice every day. When working with people that have different experiences than me, I can use empathy to connect with them and let them know that they are being understood, not just heard. While I explained that I grew up in a situation out of my control, I realized that I am still a white heterosexual in a world full of hate. As the quote says, If you are white, you are a beneficiary of privilege you no longer have the right to ignore. I have seen praises and rewards given to my white peers over peers that are a different race, not only because of the corrupt system, but because of lack of opportunity. In my community, there are lots of immigrated Hispanic families who came to my town with little to nothing. They are not able to afford all the different things that my white peers have. This plays a major role in my understanding and practice of inclusive leadership, because I was able to see firsthand the power and privilege that others are able to take advantage of. In the aspect of power, I have realized how many people are truly in my life that have power are normally white males. When I did the reflection journal in class and listed the people who are my doctors, dentists, bosses, and other things of the sort, it was a big eye-opener for me. The element of power and privilege can also be taken advantage of for the people that have it. For myself, I can use mine in a sense of being a voice for minorities. This quote is about leadership and how this class has challenged me. A leader takes people where they want to go. A great leader takes people where they don't necessarily want to go, but ought to be. This class has challenged and expanded my understanding and practice of leadership by getting me out of my comfort zone. I learned and researched topics that are covered up and not brought to light. It has encouraged me to do outside research and inspired me to be more informed and search for concealed stories. I understand now that even if I am not contributing to discrimination, I am not being a leader and practicing leadership concepts. As I was growing up, I did not realize that being a leader could be applied in so many situations. I always believed that you were only a leader when you had a major role in a club or even on a sports team. This class has allowed me to discover that I can be a leader anywhere and everywhere that I go, especially by practicing inclusive leadership. An important strategy that I will take away from this class is developing a growth mindset. This strategy stems from the in-class activity when we split the class in half, and half were the alphas and the other half were omegas. I remember being quite frustrated when we were doing this activity because when the other half of the class would join my side, they would not cooperate with what we were trying to have them do. I felt the same way when I visited the other half because I would try and practice my culture, but it would not be reciprocated. This taught me to have a growth mindset. I believe a good leader is patient and should be willing to take time to understand other people's perspectives and cultures. I realized that a culture can be a complete 180 from my own, not just little differences. Another way that I can practice inclusive leadership through a core value of justice. Being a leader in justice means a lot to me because I view it as wanting to make a change and moving forward with the change. I believe justice is further than just being inclusive and kind, but also ensuring equal opportunity and taking away the advantage of privileged people have on oppressed people. I always thought that justice had to do with the justice system, but it is not always the case. There are several different cases, like how people are being treated on the street or how they are being treated in a store. In the 5 faces of repression, violence sticks out to me heavily because it is the most obvious to me. Violence is a form of oppression that I believe is the easiest to be a leader in and acknowledge. Minorities should never have to worry about living their life in fear, which is where I, as someone who is privileged, am able to practice leadership and help in these situations. In my group facilitation project, where I learned about the oppressed group of the indigenous people, it was a harsh realization that they were and still are being violently oppressed, as well oppressed in all different aspects of life. I know about some of the history about violence against indigenous people, but I was not aware about the extent and how much it is still going on. I learned what the word xenophobia meant, which I would have never thought would be so common in today's age. This applies to my knowledge and strategy in practicing inclusive leadership. I am still practicing my knowledge by reaching out for concealed stories and bringing their reality to light, and still using the strategy of being empathetic towards these oppressed people as well. Another way I can practice inclusive leadership is for people with disabilities. A big realization that I came to from this facilitation and at-home reading was that rather than being pitiful with people with disabilities, it is to be an ally and to not look at them differently. In one of the TED Talks that Elise Roy gives, she discusses her disability of her hearing effects. She discusses how this has actually been an advantage to her. I have never thought about how having a disability could be an advantage to somebody else, but this really opened my eyes, and now I can appreciate other disabilities just as I would appreciate anybody else with different kinds of talents. Therefore, by practicing inclusive leadership, I can ensure that people with disabilities are able to bring lots to the table. All in all, I hope that my presentation can inspire you to go out and fight. Ignorance is not bliss.